Hello everyone, we are at the Face the Music conference at the Arts Centre in Melbourne. I'm here with Steve. How's it going?
Fantastic, Alex. This is all a part of Melbourne Music Week. The Face the Music conference has been around for many years now, and it's a fantastic opportunity to meet with people within the music industry, hear their thoughts, go to a few sessions. It's fantastic.
Yeah, this year's lineup is looking pretty spectacular. I'm sure a lot of people are going to go away from the conference with some really interesting insights they'll be able to take home with them.
That's right, and Red Sky Music are going to be interviewing various different speakers and those involved with the conference, and we're going to kick it off with an interview with the keynote speaker, Ruth Daniel from the UK.
Alrighty, I'm now here with Ruth Daniel, one of the keynote speakers here at the Face the Music conference here in Melbourne. Thanks for joining us, Ruth.
No problem. No, thanks for having me.
What's it like being here at the conference? Have you been able to check a little bit of it out?
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's my first time in Australia, so first time in Melbourne, which is an amazing city. And the conference is a really incredible conference. What I like about it most is the talks are kind of quite radical for a music industry conference. And I really like the presence of women in this conference. Every single session that I've seen has had a really strong presence of women. And I think having that voice is really, really important. I particularly enjoyed JD Sampson's presentation this morning. I thought it was really kind of pushing boundaries, really groundbreaking. So yeah, it's been an incredible conference so far.
Yeah, I think it's really shaping up as one of the themes of the conference. I think the role of women, I suppose, going forward in the music industry. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the enterprise in place of war. So obviously that's really kind of grown over the years. Yep. Now, just with relation to that, I suppose in some respects it's kind of like art as a form of aid for areas that are involved in conflict or disadvantage. How do you, I suppose, see music and art more generally as a form of aid for people in these situations?
I think that music and art is a kind of a basic human right. I think people need to be able to express themselves and to be able to talk about their situation. And I think that quite often the people that we work with don't have those opportunities. They maybe don't have internet. Maybe they're in an isolated community that's suffering from current conflict. So what music and art enables those people to do is have a voice. So through music, it enables them to talk about their situation and present their own perspective in a way that we don't get to see through the media. Quite often the stuff that we see in the news, I'll watch the news, I'll see the way a country is presented, and then I'll go to the country, I'll be on the ground, and it is entirely different. And when people tell you their stories and their realities, it quite often conflicts completely with what we see in the mainstream media. So for me, creativity is a way that people can have a voice, they can tell their stories, and they can actually reach and break through to global platforms, particularly because of digital and the internet. They can release their record, they can talk about it through hip-hop, and then this can become heard throughout the rest of the world. And then what tends to happen is those artists become mobilised, so they are taken to different countries, and it really presents an alternative perspective, which I think is really, really important. I think for me, I've seen music change opportunities for people. I've seen it change social situations across whole cities, across countries for people. So for me, it's a really powerful way of people changing their realities and kind of empowering people and giving them a voice.
I suppose one of the challenges with that is that when people think about aid, they think about things like obviously shelter, bedding, clothing, food, water, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Have there been any challenges in trying to kind of convince and lobby for musical instruments, paintbrushes, whatever it might be, to actually be, I suppose, given to people as part of this kind of
I remember having a conversation with a really big charity in the UK, and I said, is it possible we could use some of your shipping containers to ship music equipment? And they sort of just looked really puzzled and said, well, people need aid and people need food. And I agree, obviously that's really important, but without people being able to be creative, there doesn't seem very much point to being alive to me. If people can't have a voice or be creative or create art or create work, I think that's a fundamental human right. And I understand that people need to eat, but for me it's important. And I've seen this so many times. And so, but we've had a massive donation of equipment in the UK that we take out to different places. We've had a lot of love from the music industry, musicians, people on the street giving us equipment, because people can really see the value in that. And when we've made concerts, or we've taken artists out to collaborate with artists in townships or war zones, the results of that are just so powerful. One of the most important things is when we take famous artists from the UK to an isolated township, say in Zimbabwe, the most important thing is that people went there. That these people who were famous in their own country, they went and they collaborated and got to know a place where people in their own city don't know these sorts of places, you know.
Yeah.
And it's really meaningful for people there. It shows that they're not forgotten, you know, that they're not just really isolated. So I think for me, it's a fundamental human right. People need to be able to create. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading, I suppose, a bit about what's actually come out of this, and I was just thinking about, you talked about a bit about democratization of music, and I suppose the collapsing of the hierarchies over the past 15, 20 years, especially with the rise of digital. So with the democratization, when I think about the way things are changing, I still see these really large artists around the world, like obviously you think about your Miley Cyruses and your Foo Fighters and the like. Is democratization still quite realistic for some of these smaller artists in terms of getting their music heard, I suppose?
I mean, I think the internet was a great thing. I think, you know, digital really shook everything up in the music industry, the traditional industry, where, you know, there was a long time where you had to be a big artist. You couldn't really exist as a smaller artist. And it was really about that top-end artist making loads and loads of money through what they do. Whereas now artists can make a sustainable living. There's an idea that if you can earn as much as a plumber through your music, then that's an amazing thing, right? So I think there's just been this shift in what success means to artists. And that's really important. And I also think that through the internet, the way in which people make music, the way in which people consume music, but the way in which people who make music can connect with their audiences has totally changed and become more democratized. So as an artist, you can now talk directly to your fans. You can have that conversation. You can build a relationship with them in the way that you want, produce the music that you want to produce. You might not be as big as the Foo Fighters in the end, but I don't know if that matters to most artists. So for me, it's an incredibly exciting time, and I'm seeing this not just happen in the UK or in America or here in Australia, where these kinds of really amazing grassroots scenes are starting to emerge, but in Zimbabwe, in Brazil, in Colombia. And for me, what's exciting is what happens when these kind of connections and networks become connected, and you have artists from Brazil working with artists in Zimbabwe, working with artists in Australia, producing work, mobilising those artists between those different places, so that people can get great experiences. And maybe they're not going to make millions of pounds or dollars, but they can sustain what they do and have this rich kind of cultural experience through that.
I think it's really interesting. Obviously, I've been reading up about your exploits in, I suppose, Brazil over the years with an organisation there. Tell us a little bit about those experiences when you're in Brazil.
Yeah, I mean, working in Brazil for me has been really interesting. I work with one of the most revolutionary organisations across the world called Fora do Eixo. Fora do Eixo basically mobilise music activity across the whole of Brazil at a kind of grassroots and independent level. So they basically work with an exchange economy system, and they work and live in houses, casas, across 200 cities in Brazil. And they work with 33,000 artists every year, and they produce 600 festivals, and they do this all with an exchange economy system. So they have their own currency, they have their own bank, and they generate millions of dollars a year for the independent music infrastructure. And that's something that's emerged over the past sort of 7 years. And it's for me, it's an autonomous system that works with people mobilising musicians, producing festivals, producing great cultural output. A lot of that is commercialised, and producing their own infrastructure that goes outside of the mainstream. So it's not your Miley Cyruses, it's not your Foo Fighters, but it's amazing artists that they nurture that come through this system. And I think that system's transferable to a lot of other places as well. So I think it's interesting because we're seeing examples of innovation happening maybe emerging countries, developing countries, that could be transferred, and we can learn a lot from those places.
And do you envisage any barriers, I suppose, moving forward with this? Because obviously we're seeing these kind of barriers break down before us, but are there any kind of things that might happen across the journey that might, I suppose, prohibit the continued development and democratisation of music in that respect?
I think it's. I don't like to predict the future, because things change so much, and we don't know that we have Facebook today, but in 5 years, we thought we were set with MySpace, right? And then Facebook came along. We don't know how technology is going to change, and that will impact upon the way we produce, consume, and sustain music across the world. But I think the thing that is assert for me is the power of people and the power of those networks. So if we can work to continue to strengthen the networks at the grassroots through digital technology enabling us to do that, things as basic as Skype or email or Facebook or whatever, then we can build an infrastructure that will adapt to whatever changes come into play. If we're strong at the grassroots and we're making stuff, and quite often we're making stuff with very few resources, we're making stuff because we have to make it. If we continue to do that, then we're adaptable. We can change and adapt to whatever happens.
Yeah, I think from a creative perspective as well, with some of these different cultures kind of coming together. I mean, you're talking about obviously Zimbabwe and Brazil. What about, from an artistic perspective, we're hearing new sounds because we're seeing different cultures kind of collide, and it's the best thing that can happen to music, I think. So.
Absolutely, I think we talk about music becoming quite homogenised in terms of sound. For me, wow, there's so many really boring bands that are really famous. I think for me, it's as soon as you start to chip away at what's there online, you can find loads of really unique sounds from across the world. And I think what happens for me is we've made lots of different types of music. And music's always a mashup of what's happened before. And I think as we continue to become more globalised and connected, the sounds that are going to emerge are going to be so exciting and interesting. And I think as we become more technologically advanced, what's possible in terms of how we make that sound is really exciting. The way we experience a show, the way we use our smartphones, the way we use the internet to enhance our live experiences, to prolong those live experiences beyond just being in a physical space watching a gig. That for me is so exciting, and I think that's the benefit in terms of how connected we are and how much people, you don't have to be necessarily really wealthy or privileged to make interesting stuff happen now with technology. So it's a very, for me, an incredibly exciting time.
This is your first time in Australia, so obviously you've been to all sorts of amazing places in the world. When you look at Australia and the music industry here, are there any challenges that we face in terms of, I suppose, our own grassroots music, and in terms of, I suppose, getting a little bit more exposure and being more accessible to I suppose, a more disadvantaged people in our country?
I think it's quite interesting because, there's a couple of things. One of them is Australia is massive, but the population is really small. And I think that it's hard. I understand the road trips here between bands doing gigs can be 4 days. So in the UK, you couldn't travel for 4 days. So there's a lot of opportunity for bands to very quickly do gigs in somewhere like the UK. So I think geography is a challenge here for artists. I also think that the sounds that I hear are very much not representative maybe of the whole population. So I think I'm really interested to find out more about the Aborigine communities here and how those communities can maybe engage on a more mainstream platform. Yep. So I think, so maybe there's some of the things that could be explored in the future, and I know there are a lot of people here that are working to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Ruth.
No
thanks
problem.
for coming to Melbourne for the conference, and
thanks to Melbourne for having me.
Enjoy the rest of your time in Australia, and thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Hi guys, I'm here with Vader, Joe and Sarah. How's it going, girls?
Very well, thank you.
Fantastic. And you guys are all part of One of One, which is a website aimed towards music. Could you tell us a bit more about it?
Sure. So One of One is a website where we interview women in the music industry. So we've interviewed how many women so far?
Just under 50 women.
Just
and
under
we
50
launched
women?
back in March of this year.
Yeah.
Yep, so we interview women doing all different things in the music industry, promoters, bookers, people that work at labels, audio engineers, all different kinds of people to get an idea of how their job operates and how they got to where they did.
Great. And what's the response been like so far? It's been about 8 months in running. What's the response been like so far?
It's been overwhelmingly positive, which is always a good thing. Positive.
Had a good reaction from women and men as well. We have a nominations part of the website, and it's been really great to see a lot of men and women nominating women to be on the website.
That's fantastic. And so what led you to create a website for women in the music industry?
Well, it actually started, or a conversation between all of us started around this time last year, would you say? And we just wanted to offer a platform where people could celebrate, be inspired and encouraged through other women's stories and stuff like that. I've forgotten the question.
The inspiration behind the website. Yeah. What led you to create?
It was partly from last year's panel at Face the Music called Hens in the Cockhouse, which was about women in the music industry, and I guess from that we we're kind of frustrated by the recognition that or the lack of recognition that women get in the industry. And I guess from that, we wanted action from it, and we wanted to build this positive thing that I think we did, and we're really proud of it.
Yeah. Well, that session generated a lot of interest and a lot of talking points from last year. It's back on again tomorrow. So what are you sort of hoping to achieve 12 months down the track in the talks and the session?
So I think tomorrow is more surrounding all the positive initiatives that have come out from the last 12 months, one of one being one of them. So yeah, I think that's kind of what everyone is talking about. I think we've got someone from Music Victoria who have brought out a report this year about how many women are in the industry and how many women are on boards, and so that's a really interesting read if you get the chance to read that. And then we've got a few legends on that panel, so I'm really looking forward to it. It's at 1:25.
Yeah, no, it definitely looks like a good session. With the data that you've just received from Music Victoria, how much of a percentage of women are there working in the music industry?
I can't remember off the top of my head. Can you guys?
It depends kind of what sector of the industry you're in as well. We're kind of seen as, what's the word? The minority.
Yeah.
I really don't like that word.
Yeah.
But we're seen as the minority in CEO roles and the faces of companies, but also in the audio engineer space or the DJ space or women in hard rock and heavy metal. There's not that many women in those sectors, but kind of looking at the whole industry as a whole, in my mind, I think it's a 50-50 thing. Yeah. It's just a matter of us not being in those top roles and getting the recognition up there.
Yeah.
Well, I've been able to see, in my experiences, it probably is around about that 50-50 mark. However, it does seem that more senior roles tend to be male-orientated. In regards to artists, female artists have really over the last 12 months also, they seem to be growing a lot in popularity. Courtney Barnett is up for quite a few ARIA nominations this year, and Sia took home a bag last year. Do you find that women in the actual creative side of things, that's moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. There seems to be a lot more women getting out there, and I think women also supporting each other as well. We've sort of noticed that a lot with what we're doing.
Fantastic. And just on a side note, Sarah, you're here as you're talking in regards to streaming.
Yep.
So that's one thing I've wanted to know about, and probably people at home as well. Cool. I pay my Spotify subscription each year,
Good.
but is wondering where the money actually goes to, because there's talk that the artists see very little of it, and that there's how much does actually get back to the artists? Is it quite small?
It really depends on the artist's contract. Mm-hmm. So I work for Ditto Music along with Vader, and we represent about 100,000 independent artists. Mm-hmm. And the way that we're set up is that we give 100% back to the bands. So the stores and streaming sites will usually take around 30%, and they give 70% back to us, which we then pass on to the bands. If a band's signed to a label and then they have a deal with that label, that might mean that they see less. I'm not really sure of individual artists and their percentages, but depends on the contract that they've signed. But a lot of the times, if they're an independent artist, they'll get most of it back.
Oh, well, that's a good start. I mean, there was a bit of controversy earlier in the year when Taylor Swift said she's taking all of her music off Spotify because of the money side of things. Is that more of a commercial issue than say, I guess, with the independent artists?
Yeah, independent artists. It was funny, after that happened, we had a lot of artists wanting to take their music off Spotify as well. And our viewpoint is that it's their music and they can have it where they want to, so they still have control over it. But again, it goes back to the contracts that the artists have signed with the label, or if they're independent. But streaming revenues are really starting to rise. So you might have seen lately that some of the major labels are getting more income from streaming revenue rather than digital downloads. So it's really on the way up, which is positive.
That's great. Well, ladies, thanks very much for chatting. It was good to speak to you, and look forward to the session tomorrow, and all the best for the rest of the conference.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Next at Face the Music Conference 2015, I'm here with Anna Laverty. How's it going, Anna?
Good, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us. So how do you feel about the conference? It's a pretty exciting opportunity for people to gather some information and insights about the music industry.
Yeah, great. It's a great lineup this year. yesterday I was going through the conference list and thinking like how great all the panels were and how I actually wanted to go and see a lot of them myself. So yeah, it's great.
Fantastic. And this afternoon you've actually got a few panels yourself. Give us a bit of insight as to what you've got coming up.
So the first one I'm doing is called Hens in the Cock House, which is about women who work in the music industry, and there's a big gender imbalance, so I guess it's just trying to address that, ways to encourage women to take up, music as their career choice. Then I'm doing one on the producers, which is about music production, so breaking down a song that I've worked on with a bunch of other producers as well. And then the last one is just a music listening panel where we critique a 45-second snippet of a song. Yeah, an anonymous song. So that'll be.
You don't know what it is at the moment.
Don't know any of the artists or the song. So yeah.
Well, it's a busy afternoon. So.
It is. Yeah.
So just talk a bit about your experience. Obviously, in London you had a huge breakthrough there. You got to work with people like Paul Wentworth and Ben Hillier, and obviously in Australia you've been able to work with artists such as Nick Cave, obviously, Cut Copy, Meg Mac. It's been really exciting. How did you actually get into the industry and the role that you're in now?
So I went to WAPA, which is the West Australian Academy of Performing Arts, for 3 years, and just learnt about sound, so the basics of sound and production and recording and things like that. And then I went to London and I just did work experience for a long time, and then they offered me a job and I started from the very, very bottom and just kind of kept watching and learning and over the years, and now I'm a producer in my own right, so yeah.
Fantastic. So also just, I suppose, a little bit of advice out there for someone who might be, late teens, they're really keen on going into like sound engineering or producing. Any kind of tips you might have for them?
Yeah, well there's lots, but I guess the most basic one is just be on time, be passionate. You don't have to know everything, and don't pretend like you know stuff if you don't. That's how you learn. And just, there are jobs out there. Just keep going, and then eventually you'll be the last one standing. Yeah. Well,
that's really good advice, I think. And just one thing, you were involved in the APRA Songmakers mentoring program, which was really good. How's that been for you?
It's been amazing, actually. So what they do is they pair up a songwriter and a producer, and we travel around the country and go to schools, and we work with like 16 of their students. And we get them to write and record a song in 2 days. So it's about setting deadlines for them, getting them to finish a piece of work and showing them that it's possible to do in 2 days. Yeah, and we also pair them up with people that they wouldn't normally work with, so it's really good because the whole program is about showing people that songwriting is a career option as well as being like a musician or whatever. So it's showing them that they can contribute to songwriting in a team, as would happen in the professional world. Yeah.
I think sometimes, you might have a lot of young people might kind of pigeonhole themselves into a certain type of thinking.
Know. Yeah, they might not know that they are the career options that are open to them. So it's really good to show that.
It sounds like a good experience. I mean, obviously Lior's doing it and Katie Noonan. There's a whole group of people actually doing it.
Yeah.
So many different insights there.
Totally. I work with Cav Temperley a lot, so from Eskimo Joe, and he's just really great at it. He's such an inspiring guy to work with anyway, for me as his colleague, but also for the kids to work with him as well. Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us, Anna. Good luck this afternoon with the busy conference, but thanks so much for joining us, and all the best over the coming years.
Cool. Thank you. Cheers.
Hi guys, I'm here with Chloe Turner from Music Victoria and from Listen Records. How are you going, Chloe?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I can't complain. Nice. The weather's starting to get good. Now we're going to talk a bit about Music Victoria in a minute, but you started a bit over a year ago, Listen Records, as a feminist and queer record label.
Yep.
Now I'm guessing starting a record label from scratch is difficult as it is. How did you go pitching the feminist queer side of things as well?
Well, Listen has been going for just over a year, but Listen Records was only started a few months ago.
Okay.
And Listen is, for anyone who doesn't know, is a kind of a feminist organisation that's trying to document and discuss women's and queer experiences in the Australian music industry. So the label is just kind of built off that already existing views and this already existing reputation.
Yep.
And we've done 2 releases now. We've got another one coming out in March, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, nice one. And I believe this wristband that you've got at the moment
Yeah.
as well. Tell us a bit about this.
It's a USB bracelet with 15 artists little compilation. It was released in October to kick off the label. So yeah.
Fantastic. Any artists noteworthy artists we should look out for?
We've got on here. There's Pikelet, Love Diagrams, KT Spit, Beloved Elk, Astrid Demon from Sydney, Julia Y. There's a bunch. I can't even remember them all. But I'm doing a 7-inch with a Melbourne band called Claws and Organs. That's coming out on Saturday night at Bar Open.
Fantastic.
And next year there's a duo called Sinta and Stina, and it'll be our first proper 12-inch vinyl record. So very
fantastic. All moving forward.
Yeah.
So with Listen, what has the reaction sort of been like within the music industry to not only the organisation but to the label?
It changes. Mostly it's pretty positive and exciting and stuff. Like, we do lots of things. We're super busy. We've gotten a couple of grants recently, which has been really exciting. But I think we've gotten a fair bit of support, and it's definitely growing very quickly.
Well, that's all you can ask
for.
So when it comes to music, Face the Music, you've got a conference tomorrow in relation to females in the music industry. Can you tell us a bit about the session?
Yeah, so it's called Hens in the Cockhouse, Shake Your Tail Feather, and it's on at 1:25 p.m. And I'm on there with a few other amazing women, including JD Sampson, who's coming down from the keynote. And I think Glenn Dickey from Sounds Australia is moderating it, and it's kind of going to be a bit different. It's like more like a presentation more than a discussion. So each person will be presenting their kind of women's initiative for 7 minutes. Cassie Pace from Music Victoria, she's on our board as well. She's also going to be on the panel talking about the recent report that Music Victoria just released on women. And I'll be on there talking about Listen Records. So,
That's great. I guess there's sort of two sides when it comes to females in the industry, or just the music industry in general. There's what people see and hear from artists, and then there's also administration and publicists, management as well. So what is it sort of like behind the scenes for women in the music industry in that kind of admin role?
It's a hard question. It's good, but it can be challenging. I feel like it can be more challenging for women and queer people and other marginalised groups than it is for men. Just being taken seriously and not people not going above your head to talk to someone else and that kind of stuff. You'd be surprised how much it happens. And for artists as well, getting that respect and actually making people believe that you do know how to play a guitar and you do know how to use your gear is something that we have to deal with a lot, surprisingly.
It's not good. Now, you're also a member of Music Victoria as well, and tomorrow you've got you're helping to curate a session about music law.
That's today. This afternoon.
Right?
Yep.
So a bit about that session. So there's a lot of people who just go into the music industry, just think they write songs and that's about it. But you've got to protect your rights and your music and everything.
Yeah.
So what are some of the key things that you want to focus on in this session?
Well, this one was actually curated by my co-worker Nick Cooper, but he's working out the questions and everything at the moment, I believe. But it should be pretty interesting, just making sure that musicians and stuff, because it's so daunting thinking about copyright and law and how to make sure you're protected, just how where do you start? So I think just the basics and really kind of easy common knowledge and steps for most musicians and managers and people emerging into the industry is what we're going to be aiming for. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Chloe, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us, and all the best for the rest of the conference.
Thanks.
Well, that's it for Face the Music 2015. We hope you enjoyed it. Would like to thank Face the Music, Remedy PR, and also the Arts Centre Melbourne for having us.
Yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic couple of days here at the Arts Centre. A really impressive schedule, jam-packed full of some really interesting activities and information sessions and presentations from some amazing people. I think a lot of people are going to go away from this event with some really interesting insights about the music industry.
Oh yeah, definitely. And if you'd like to learn some more information about Face the Music, head to their website and be sure to keep an eye out for next year because it's going to be very good again.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.